7 years after I buried my daughter, I believed I was honoring her memory the best way I knew how. Every year, without fail, I sent $40,000 to her husband so my granddaughter would never have to worry about food, school, or a roof over her head. I trusted him because I thought it was what my daughter would have wanted. Then one quiet afternoon, my 12-year-old granddaughter grabbed my sleeve, looked around to make sure no one could hear us, and whispered words that made my heart stop. "Grandpa, please don't send Dad any more money. Just follow him once. You'll understand." I thought she was confused. I wanted to believe she was mistaken, but something in her frightened eyes told me this wasn't the imagination of a child. It was a cry for help. My name is Robert Harrison. Before we continue, I want to mention that the people and scenes you see throughout this video are visual dramatizations created to help tell this emotional story in a cinematic way. If stories about family, betrayal, and unforgettable life lessons mean something to you, subscribe to Behind Dad. Every week, I share stories that remind us why the truth always finds its way into the light. My daughter, Sarah, passed away after a sudden illness. Losing her was the greatest pain I have ever known. She left behind her husband, Kevin, and their little daughter, Lily, who was only 5 years old at the time. Before Sarah died, I promised her I would always be there for Lily. I kept that promise in the only way I thought mattered. Every year I transferred money to Kevin so Lily could have the future Sarah dreamed about. Whenever I asked if they needed anything else, Kevin always smiled, thanked me, and said everything was under control. For years, I never questioned him, until Lily whispered those words. The fear in her voice stayed with me all night, and for the first time in 7 years, I started wondering if I had been trusting the wrong person all along. The next morning, I couldn't get Lily's words out of my head. I had known my granddaughter since the day she was born. She wasn't the kind of child who made up stories for attention. She had her mother's gentle heart. If she whispered something instead of saying it out loud, it meant she was truly afraid someone might hear. I decided not to confront Kevin. Not yet. If Lily was right, warning him would only make him hide whatever was happening. So I called Kevin later that afternoon like I always did. He answered cheerfully, "Hey Robert, everything's great over here." I smiled, even though my stomach was in knots. I was thinking about stopping by this weekend. There was a pause. Then he laughed nervously. "This weekend probably isn't a good time. Lily has school activities, and I've got work." That answer surprised me. For 7 years, he had never once told me not to visit. I simply replied, "No problem." But inside, I had already made another decision. I was going to follow him. 2 days later, I parked across the street before sunrise. Kevin left the house around 8 o'clock wearing business clothes, just like always. He kissed Lily goodbye, got into his SUV, and drove away. I stayed several cars behind him. At first, everything looked normal. He stopped at a coffee shop. Then he drove toward downtown. I expected him to pull into his office parking garage. Instead, he turned into the parking lot of an expensive country club. I frowned. Maybe he had a business meeting. I waited. An hour passed. Then another. No meeting ever seemed to happen. Kevin walked out wearing golf clothes, laughing with 3 men who looked like close friends. They spent the afternoon playing golf, eating at the clubhouse, and ordering expensive drinks. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't someone working overtime to raise my granddaughter. This was someone living comfortably, using money I believed was paying for Lily's future. But what hurt me even more came later that evening. On my way back, I stopped by a grocery store. By pure coincidence, I saw Lily there with a neighbor. She was carefully comparing prices on discounted food while holding a small shopping basket. The child I had been trying to protect for 7 years was counting pennies. Meanwhile, the man receiving my money every year was spending hundreds of dollars on one afternoon of luxury. I suddenly understood why Lily had whispered instead of speaking aloud. She wasn't trying to expose her father. She was trying to save the only family she had left.
चाय बस रेडी है, सही टाइम पे आई हो। बताओ आज इतनी परेशान क्यों हो?
ऑफिस में आज बहुत बुरा दिन गुजरा।
चल अब तुम रिलैक्स करो।
I drove home that evening with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I kept replaying everything I had seen. For 7 years, I believed every dollar I sent was helping Lily build a secure future. Instead, I had watched Kevin spend an ordinary Thursday afternoon at an exclusive country club while my granddaughter worried about grocery prices. I felt angry, but even more than that, I felt guilty. I had trusted too easily, and the person paying the price wasn't me. It was Lily. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at old photographs of Sarah. In every picture, she was smiling with Lily in her arms. Before she passed away, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Dad, promise me Lily will always know she's loved." I had kept sending money because I believed that promise meant trusting Kevin. Now I realized keeping my promise meant protecting Lily, even if it meant questioning the man she called Dad. The following morning, I met with my attorney, Michael Carter. He had managed my family's legal affairs for decades. I placed copies of every bank transfer on his desk and quietly told him everything I had seen. Michael read the documents without interrupting. Finally, he looked at me and said, "Robert, before we accuse anyone, we need facts. If those funds were intended for Lily's care, we need to know exactly where they've been going." He recommended hiring a licensed forensic accountant to review the transfers and Kevin's financial records that could legally be obtained. At the same time, he advised me to stop sending money directly to Kevin. Instead, any future support would be placed into a protected educational trust that only Lily could benefit from. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just reacting with emotion. I was making a plan. But before any investigation could even begin, Lily called me that evening. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Grandpa, Dad just found out someone was following him." My heart nearly stopped. Then she whispered something that made every fear inside me grow even bigger. "He's packing bags, and he keeps saying we might have to leave tonight." The moment Lily hung up, I was already reaching for my car keys. Every mile to her house felt longer than the last. My mind kept racing through every terrible possibility. Had Kevin discovered I followed him? Was he running away because he knew the truth was about to come out? Or was he planning to disappear with Lily before anyone could stop him? I prayed I wasn't too late. When I arrived, 2 police cruisers were already parked outside. Michael had acted faster than I expected. After Lily's phone call, I had contacted him, and he immediately informed the authorities that there were concerns about a child's welfare. The officers approached the house calmly while I stayed back, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. A few minutes later, the front door opened. Kevin walked outside carrying 2 suitcases. He insisted he was simply taking Lily on a vacation. The officers asked him a few routine questions. His answers didn't match. One officer quietly asked Lily if she wanted to leave. She immediately ran toward me instead. She wrapped her arms around my waist and whispered, "Grandpa, I don't want to go." That single sentence changed everything. The officers separated Kevin from Lily while child protection specialists were contacted. Over the following weeks, financial investigators discovered that most of the money I had sent over 7 years had never been used for Lily's education or daily care. It had paid for luxury memberships, vacations, expensive electronics, and personal debts. My heart broke all over again, not because of the money, but because every dollar had been meant to honor Sarah's final wish. The court later approved a protected trust for Lily's future. Every cent remaining was placed under independent supervision, so it could only be used for her education, healthcare, and well-being. Lily eventually came to live with me while longer-term arrangements were made. And for the first time in years, I heard genuine laughter inside my home again. Sometimes I still sit on the porch and think about Sarah. I wish she were here to watch her daughter grow into the kind, brave young woman she always hoped she'd become. Lily's courage reminded me of something I'll never forget. Children often see the truth long before adults are willing to believe it. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and tell me what you would have done in my place. Share this story with someone who believes children should always have a safe voice. And don't forget to subscribe to Behind Dad, where every story reminds us that real love isn't measured by the money we give. It's measured by the people we're willing to protect.